Let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
Okay, my daughter-in-law, Joy,
Okay.
is going to be, she's parked in the car.
Okay.
Just
Let her know
where I am. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming out today. I'm glad that we did end up having enough chairs. We were a bit worried. We pulled out every chair we can find, which is why there's such a motley collection here. And my name is Lise Krebs. I am the outreach coordinator and the adult events host of all the adult events at the Gibsons and District Public Library on the absolutely gorgeous in every kind of weather, unceded ancestral lands of the Squamish Nation here in Chakwup, where the world began. And if you don't know the story about dancing on the roof and how that all happened, head next door sometime to the museum. They have a really great exhibit about that. Today, before we get rolling, I want to say hello to all our friends on Zoom as well. We have friends from all over the country joining us on Zoom, and I will be relaying the questions from them at the end. We'll have a Q&A with Leslie at the end. And before we get started with Leslie, I just want to do a couple of little ads for the library. We have, coming up this month, we have the Freedom to Read open mic. So if you've ever enjoyed a book that was banned or challenged anywhere in the world, including Chaucer, Shakespeare, the Bible, Harry Potter, Wizard of Oz, the list goes on and on. Enjoy your freedom to read from it. Come read for up to 5 minutes from any book for kids or adults that has been banned or challenged anywhere. We have great lists of those on our website as well. And of course, we have many of them in the library because that's the sign of a great library, as Joe Godwin says, is a truly great library has something in it to offend everyone. And sort of going on from that theme, we have an event on the 24th of February called Speed Date a Book. So you bring one of your favorite books, one of the books you always want to lend to your friends, and it never comes back because they lend it out to their friends. If you have a copy or if we have a copy, bring that, and then you'll get to meet a few other fun people and do a little round robin of chatting about your favorite books, and we'll have cookies, and anyway, it'll be fun. It'll be, we're speed dating the books, not the people, but you might actually make a new friend, whether paper or flesh. So. And then last but not least, we're also doing a workshop on Saturday, the 24th, about all the really cool things you can get for free from your library with your library card online, including the New Yorker, the Globe and Mail, movies, language lessons, actually all kinds of different lessons in many different subjects, of course, ebooks, e-audiobooks. If you live in somewhere like Half Moon Bay, like I do, you listen to a lot of e-audiobooks in the car, going back and forth, or maybe you're just, cleaning your house or doing the gardening. It's a great way to keep you company. You can bring your devices to this workshop and we will tell you how these things work and get them working on your device. So that is by sign up. So all these are on our fabulous website. And if you sign up for our monthly e-newsletter, you'll get next month's events as well. Or you can always call us or email us at any time if you have any questions about them or want to sign up. And thank you to everybody who signed up today. Leslie has graciously allowed us to record this and has said that I can send the link to the recording to everybody who signed up online, whose email I have. If you think I don't have your email, my card, Lise Krebs, is up at the front desk. You can grab that. It has my email address on it. You can send me an email if you think that perhaps your friend signed you up or whatever, and you'd like to get the link. So enough blabbing from me. We are totally thrilled to have Leslie Davidson here all the way from Ontario. She's staying with her sister, Jane Davidson, whom so many of us know. And she has written Dancing in Small Spaces, a memoir about her life and her husband's life with Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia. And it's a beautiful moving book, which we also own in the library, but you can get your very own copy. Jane and Boyd are selling copies at the back, just around the corner towards the teen area. And Leslie will be signing them up here at the front after the reading. So without any further ado, let us welcome Leslie. Thank you. That's okay.
I just have to make sure I get the right glasses on. There'll be a lot of switching back and forth. Thank you, Lise. That was a lovely introduction. And to Lisa and to David, thank you very much. I don't want this. I'm gonna stand. Okay, yeah. Okay. Can you hear me, first of all? Can you hear me at the back? Okay. Let me know if you can't. Thanks very much. So thank you to the library, everybody involved in being so warm and welcoming, and the little panic about numbers that got resolved so nicely. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my sister Jane Davidson, who many of you here will know, who is every bit as brilliant, capable, funny, and kind. It begins. Get used to it, boys and girls. As you all think she is. And to Boyd Norman, her partner, the man who would be chef and bass player extraordinaire, who cheerfully welcomed me into his home and thinks I'm kidding when I say I might just not go home. I don't actually come from Ontario to here. I was raised in Ontario, but I live in Revelstoke, BC, and the winter there can be quite brutal. But it's not this year, and so this is the first year I managed to get out. Kara Stanley, I want to say thank you. Kara read my first draft of Dancing in Small Spaces, sent it to her just retired agent and a friend in publishing, and encouraged me so much with her actions and her words that I dared to submit it. Thank you, Kara. To every one of you who has come in person or via Zoom, hello to Zooming people. To everyone who phoned or texted or emailed or bought or borrowed or loaned the book to a friend or just been kind to somebody today. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am bound to my man of the hills, and he is bound to me. We lump and bump over stone and stump, crag and meadow alike to greet. Startle the marmot on his whistling rock. I cling to moss, he scales a peak, but we are tethered to we. I wander alongside my traveling man, and he wanders along beside me. A winding road, sirens lament, valleys, vistas, and Berber tents, cedar and cactus, the moon's eclipse. To a slip of a child with the wink of a smile, we speak with our hands, a nod, a grin. He wants to keep roaming, I want to be homing. He wanders along with me. I share a canoe with old riverman, and he shares a canoe with me. White water foam becomes his home. Tranquil shores with sand for my toes. Onward he paddles, while backwards I dig. That moose in the lilies is much too big. But we share our boat. We stay afloat. Old riverman and me. We make a home in the heart of a town. In mountain shadow by river's edge. We lose our days in children's play. Hills are tamed by small ones' steps, rivers calmed by small ones' fears. Our hearts near burst to watch them grow. I hold them close, he helps them go. We play our part, love harbors we, my gentleman and me. I wrote that poem for my husband, Lincoln, in the spring of 2005. Lincoln had just retired. He was 8.5 years older than I was, and I wasn't quite ready to say goodbye to the classroom. So he was off to Paris with a little folding bicycle, one that I had given him for a retirement gift, in order to join a small group of cyclists about to pedal from Paris to Istanbul, my retirement gift to him. He followed the Orient Express route all the way. I tucked a poem into his backpack, the poem I just read, into his backpack just before he left, and included a note that read, "Just in case you have too much fun, remember to whom you belong. Come home to me." He called me from Paris when he found the poem. He told me it brought tears to his eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, "I didn't mean to make you cry." Secretly, I was thrilled. That poem was about the connection Lincoln and I shared. Yeah, please give me a signal if you're having difficulty with my speed or my volume or my crying. Nothing I can do about that. The poem was about the connection that Lincoln and I shared. I wrote to remind him of our stories expressed in every image, from the marmot dragging his camera bag across the scree on Kokanee Glacier, to the eclipse of the moon on our 25th wedding anniversary, witnessed from a little beach in Baja, Mexico, from the tents erected by laughing Berber women in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, to the moose that confronted our canoe in the Bowring Lakes. They all reference stories, our stories, the stories that tethered we to we. I was pretty sure he was coming home. I had no reason to doubt the strength of our connection, though believe you me, we had struggled through times of seriously malfunctioning communication, times when we could not make things right between us on our own, times we needed help getting things back on track. 2 years later, Lincoln and I had both retired from teaching, and I was overbrimming with gratitude that what we had between us was a gift we had hard-earned together, a gift we could cling to when our world became small and everything changed. Dancing in Small Spaces is not the story of our 40+ years together. It is mostly the story of our last years together. From the time of our diagnosis in 2011, mine with Parkinson's disease was first, and his just months later with dementia, a dementia that turned out to be Lewy body dementia, until his death in 2017 and into the after years, during which I learned to dance alone. Do you need me?
Sorry, I'm just gonna try to adjust the mic for you a little bit more. So it doesn't, there you go.
All right.
That should be better.
Okay. The writer Richard Wagamese spoke about the importance of sharing our stories because that's how we make connections. I didn't know at the time that a desire for connection was why I was writing. In fact, I didn't know I was writing a book at all. I was writing emails almost daily to our friends, to our girls, to my siblings, my mother, trying to keep them apprised of how we were doing. They were anxious about Lincoln, and his disease was progressing so quickly. The demands of caregiving were causing my Parkinson's symptoms to flare. It had become impossible to speak on the phone about him because understandably it upset him to hear himself spoken about. So when he went to bed, I sat down at the computer and told those closest to us about our day. My first children's book, In the Red Canoe, also in its own way, a book about Lincoln, was published by Orca Books, and my editor encouraged me to establish a social media presence, and I decided to join Facebook. I'd like to read you the first post I wrote for that Facebook page that was supposed to be about my writing for kids, but became solely about Lincoln and me and the challenges of living with his and her neurodegenerative diseases. At this point, it is the fall of 2015, and we have just moved from Grand Forks, BC to Revelstoke. Lincoln has been in care for just over a year in Hardyview Lodge in Grand Forks and is now a resident of Mount Parche Court, the long-term care facility in Revelstoke, known locally as the Cottages. This is from page 159. And chapter 8, the title of the chapter is The One Who Has to Watch. And the book is a series of scenes. And this is the first scene in that chapter. We are 2 months into our first year in Revelstoke, and there's a well-established rhythm to our days that makes some kind of sense to me, and I hope to Lincoln. I visit twice a day. I help him eat, and then we walk. After lunch on Thanksgiving Monday, I lead us out for a wander in the quiet subdivision near the cottages. I support him with one hand and direct the wheelchair with the other. It is a tricky juggling act. If he freezes, I have just seconds to get the wheelchair under him before he hits the ground. I'm getting skilled at recognizing the signs. His steps slow. He stares ahead or down without blinking. He's unresponsive to voice or to touch. This state in the Lewy body dementia literature is described as a transient loss of consciousness, but I come across the phrase transient catatonia, and though it is medically inaccurate, it seems the perfect descriptor for what I see happening to him. His head is bent forward. It almost always is. He seems as fascinated by light and shadow on the ground, pebbles on the walkway, or his shoelaces, as he once was by the horizon or the farthest peak. There is a deer grazing behind the cottages, trees ablaze with gold and crimson, and new snow on the mountain. I feel sad that I cannot find a way to help him lift his eyes to such enchantments, but the day is so beautiful. And we are walking together, and I natter at myself to not taint the moment with regret. Then he stops, turns his head sideways, and looks at me. "What's up?" I ask. "Oh, just checking," he murmurs. "Checking what?" "That it's you and me." Friends read that post and responded with likes and kind comments. They shared it with others, and I received a number of private messages from strangers who were moved to write because of similar experiences in their own lives, or because they were struggling, or simply because their empathetic hearts connected them to our story. I posted randomly and frequently, mostly about the moments in our lives that made me smile and inspired gratitude. When a few people suggested I write a book, I would nod and answer, maybe, or you never know, while thinking how, when, why. And then Lincoln died. His death answered the why. Because you need to find a way through this sorrow, I told myself. Because you are not alone, and you need to remember that. Because he deserves an honoring. Because why not? A writing retreat partially answered the question of when, though after 10 days of uncharacteristic disciplined effort, I only had a rough start and a number of dead-ending stories for kids. But I had that rough start, and all those emails, and there were the articles I had written for an online magazine for readers with Parkinson's, and the Facebook posts, and a very small collection of journal entries. I've never been able to journal religiously. I make a commitment and it lasts about a week. I just had to figure out how to put it together, and the crazy quilt metaphor was born. That's how I think of the book, as a crazy quilt. I'll read you from page 2 and 3. Expand on that. One memory beckons another. Thoughts unfurl, intertwine, reach forward like arms outstretched, grasping at connections more felt than known. What was it I wanted to say? I stack memories into piles that I label and relabel, beginning, middle, end. Parkinson's, dementia, Grand Forks, Revelstoke, family, friends, before, after. Love, loss, grief, joy, guilt, forgiveness, gratitude, grace. I begin to write and lose my way along paths that twist and turn and double back. I cup a memory in the palm of my hand, and it shifts, it panics, flutters away. I cannot hold it. Thoughts tumble like colored glass shards in a kaleidoscope, brilliant and transient. Where do they go, these shattered bits of you and me? I talk to myself. That makes no sense. It made no sense. I said that already. Say it again. That's too painful to tell. I'll tell it anyway. So many tears, oh yes, so many tears. Was there really so much laughter? I think there must have been. I see myself as an ancient crone, bent and addled, hand sewing a crazy quilt of all the tattered scraps of our last years. I feather stitch together the bits and pieces of our stories, and I dream that when it is finished, I will wrap it around all those who loved him, We will touch the pieces of ourselves that cling thread by thread to one another. I dream we laugh and wonder to be so comforted. It was slow stitching. 3 years of sifting through all those bits and pieces, creating timelines, sorting, organizing, writing the missing bits, writing the connecting bits, and sharing it all with my lovely writing group who offered encouragement and advice when the self-doubt boogeyman got out of control. I found myself smiling, even laughing out loud as I reread the emails, as I dug through the memories or flipped through the photo albums. I discovered the laughter that lives the other side of tears. Laughter that mocks is cruel. Laughter that slips into the cracks in the hardest of experiences, lightens the load, underlines the absurdities. Laughter that is shared by those most affected is a gift, a light in the dark, a touch of grace. I'd like to share a couple of examples from the book that illustrate what I mean by the laughter that lives the other side of tears. Lewy body dementia is sometimes preceded by a disorder of REM phase sleep. REM sleep is our dream state sleep. REM sleep behavior disorder, or RSBD, can be a symptom of both Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia. Lewy body and Parkinson's are just a matter of location in the brain. That's the difference between them. So far, it is not affecting me, but it certainly found Lincoln long before, years before any other dementia symptoms presented themselves. From the book on page 31. It's the first scene in chapter 2, which is entitled Slipping Sideways. It begins with those night terrors. Over the next few years, they gradually increase in frequency and intensity, though in the daytime he seems normal and untroubled. But at night, he startles awake. He shouts, he flings off the bedding, searches frantically for small animals among the tangle of sheets, or begs me to run with him from dogs and men with axes. I fumble for the lamp switch and beg him to wake up, to open his eyes. I hold him and tell him over and over that he's okay. I buy a lamp for my bedside table that I can control with the clap of my hands. I think I will be able to get the room lit quickly and spare him a few seconds of that dreadful panic. One night, I'm jolted out of sleep by a frenzied tugging of the sheets. Get out, Lincoln shouts. Honey, I cry, it's okay. Then I bang my hands together with as much force as I can muster. A single sharp, loud smack that not only fails to turn on the lamp, but startles Lincoln and sends him stumbling away from me, tripping over the duvet on the floor, careening our furniture, and still shouting, get out! Well, I clap like a madwoman, and the lamp never does turn on. I fly out of bed to slap at the wall switch for the overhead light. Lincoln and I are both caught, frozen in that sudden flash of brightness like escaping prisoners trapped in a searchlight's beam in an old movie. All that is missing is the wail of sirens. We look at each other and fumble our way together. We don't hug, we cling. I feel his heart thumping against my chest, and I'm sure he can feel mine. I settle him back into the bed, and as I tuck the sheets around him, I explain about the lamp and apologize for the clapping. Is that what that was? He asks, and he starts to laugh. I thought someone was shooting at him. It was a good moment. Another characteristic of Lewy body dementia is catgrass symptom, named for the doctor who first described it. It can be present in other forms of dementia, but usually in advanced disease. It tends to occur quite early in the progression of Lewy body. The defining feature is the patient's belief that a person close to them, often the closest to them, often their spouse, has been replaced by an identical-looking imposter. It is so frightening for the sufferer, causing frustration and anger, and heartbreaking for the loved one. This is from the book, page 88. The last scene in chapter 4. My plan to move to Revelstoke in the spring of 2014 crumbles as the winter unfolds in a nightmare of confusion and paranoia for Lincoln. I cannot imagine putting him through the turmoil of packing and moving. So I make the decision to remain in the Grand Forks house. I don't know how or when we will move. I know I am losing him far more quickly than anyone predicted. Throughout that winter and into the spring, I struggled with managing his paranoia, his confusion around the real Leslie and the imposter. It takes time to figure out that a tiny amount of antipsychotic medication eases the paranoia. Getting him to take it is difficult. How can he be expected to accept pills from a woman he does not trust and sometimes fears? He refuses the pills. So I crush them in the bathroom and secret them in my left hand, which is pretty curved in all the time now anyway, like a claw, and then hide them in his food. When we finally settle on a liquid form that I can slip into his juice, I feel like Lucretia Borgia, and I'm terrified he will catch me in the act of doctoring his beverages. I know the drug can cause complications for someone with dementia, and I try to use the smallest amount possible. Dementia patients are particularly vulnerable to nasty side effects from mood-altering drugs. And I'm careful with my dosages. Maybe too careful, maybe not careful enough. We have good, kind health professionals helping us, but no one is a specialist in dementia disorders and all have huge caseloads. I write to a number of neurologists who treat dementia, but all have long waiting lists. We are talking years, not weeks or months. Even if I could find a specialist and make an appointment, travel with Lincoln is now problematic, and he tells me no more doctors. How am I to manage his care while respecting his wishes and granting him as much autonomy as possible? What are the best decisions for him, for me? It is a big bus I'm driving. Sometimes I manage to keep the bus on the road, and sometimes we blow a tire or hit the ditch. My friends Kathy and Tracy are with me one evening soon after that awful night at the movie theater. And that awful night at the movie theater is described at length in a piece. Lincoln's mistrust spreads from me to them. He wants to go for a walk. He wants to go alone late at night and lock the doors and hide the keys. Get out of here, he orders, and take your goons with you. Goons. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. I may do both. Days later, he challenges me again. You're up to something, he says. Where is she? I suggest we look at photo albums. Ask me anything about any place or any person, I say. Ask me things only the real Leslie would know. And so he pulls album after album off the shelf, and I point and explain and answer every question he asks. When I can't be stumped, he slams the last album shut and looks me in the eye, a long, hard look. Oh, you're good, he says. You're really good. Almost 7 years after my husband's death, there is no door closed on my grief. That doesn't mean it sounds like I am, but I'm not. That doesn't mean I'm wallowing in sorrow or getting some perverse pleasure out of endless mourning. But I understand now what intense sorrow feels like, how others may feel when life delivers that kind of blow. I can approach their pain with greater empathy, though I have no answers. I don't know if grief itself subsides over time or we just get better at carrying it. Sherry Fitch, a wonderful writer for adults and kids, has written a small, eloquent book on grief following the death of her son. You won't always be this sad is the title and her premise. You won't always be this sad is her promise to herself and her readers. I miss him. I miss my parents, the friends, everyone dear to me that I have lost because I love them. I still love them. That will never change. I really don't know what people mean by closure. No, there is no door closed. But I am changed. Grief is part of me now. It is part of what binds me to his memory. I think of him. I talk about him with our daughters and our friends, and I'm more likely to laugh than cry, and I cry so easily it embarrasses me. Being open may mean a more intense experience of grief, but I have come to realize that pain and heartbreak just might be the measure of our joy. Joy held in memory, joy in the moment, and joy that waits just around the corner of present sadness. You won't always be this sad. I thought I was writing the book to help myself, that I was doing work I had to do alone, that the path of sorrow was always and forever a solitary one. I didn't know then what I learned later from Richard Wagamese and other holders of wisdom. Stories provide opportunities for connection. Finding authentic ways to not feel so alone in the world helps us to survive, especially when we are grieving. In the words of Ram Dass, we're all just walking each other home. In the writing of Dancing in Small Spaces, I also wanted to honor Lincoln. If that was your intent, you might ask, how could you be so explicit about the progression of his dementia? How could you describe scenes that are deeply personal, private scenes, embarrassing, humiliating perhaps? How is that an honoring? Well, ours is not a singular story. It is shared by almost everyone who loves and cares for someone with dementia. A young man, an LPN, I think, at a caregiving workshop I attended when Lincoln still lived at home with me, said that in his experience, incontinence was the single biggest factor in people winding up in care. He may not be right, and it doesn't matter if he is or if he isn't. He was speaking to incontinence as being a last straw experience for caregivers, the thing that tipped them into overload, overwhelmed them. Oh, it certainly brought me to my knees, and I've had people comment on how difficult they found to read the episode in the book that describes that experience. I think it's so important that we talk about the hard things, the embarrassments, the humiliations. Truth is, Lincoln is not here to be embarrassed or humiliated. And if I don't tell the true story of how it was, the enormity of the challenges he faced, how can anyone understand that though his world was now so small, his courage and his grace were so huge? And also huge is his beautiful sense of humor. It bubbled its way into the heartbreak of our everyday. It was a life ring to cling to when I feared I might drown in sorrow and self-pity. Our shared laughter, that connection that survived even when he could no longer speak, is what I missed the most. And I got one more piece from the book to read. I just need to get a drink. This is lemon juice and apple cider vinegar and honey and water, and it's really good. So I'm going to read from, what's the page number? I think it's this way. Yes. This morning, as I read a few more pages of Fallen, and Kara Stanley's here, the author of Fallen, and am humbled as I always am by Kara and Simon's grace and strength, it makes me want to write again about Lincoln's grace and strength, and how it is revealed in his laughter. I want to tell one more time how he has always been a quiet, almost silent chuckler, perhaps as with so many things about our relationship, to provide balance for my loud, cackling outbursts. I want to tell that he has always been an easy smiler, and oh my goodness, the sweetness of that smile. It softens his craggy, lean features and brings such warmth to his brown eyes. Despite his disease, he still smiles frequently. It stops his caretakers in their tracks. That smile, Leslie, they say. I know exactly what they mean. I am reminded that what hard jobs they do and how little time they have just to be present with the fragile souls in their care. They must feel very empty sometimes. I'm glad for Lincoln's smile in their lives too. But Lincoln's laughter is something more. It has always been a rare occurrence. And like all rare and lovely things, it is to be treasured. These days, he laughs most in the presence of our grandchildren. At ages 4, 3, and 2, they have no memory of him except as a resident in a long-term care home. They move through his space with the ease of familiarity. They adjust his footrest, push his chair, tuck the cloth beneath his chin to catch the drool. They show him their drawings, their Lego buildings, and their stuffies. They tell him their stories. He knows they are ours. They can be happily loud, and that is when he laughs the hardest. His delight in their presence, his laughter, fills my leaking emotional bucket with a blessedness I do not take for granted. Lincoln now must contend with huge physical startles. The clinical term is myoclonic jerks. I read that they present in late stage Lewy body dementia. Late stage. The words ungloomy. I know well where he was 3 years ago, and I know well where he is today. Late stage is a reality I thought I had accepted. And then I realized I had no idea what acceptance even means. Whatever it is, it does not deny the grief. When a seizure grips him, Lincoln's arms and legs shoot out and his whole body lurches forward with such force that were he not seatbelted in, he would be flung from his chair. I lean over him, hug him, and reposition his arms and legs, more to comfort myself than him. I fight tears and inwardly rage that he must contend with this as well, but he laughs. He laughs as if this betrayal of brain and body were just another enormous joke. This day's version of tumbling over the handlebars of his bike or bungee jumping naked from a bridge. His laughter lights up my dark places. And he did bungee jump naked from a bridge. He was supposed to be going to the opening day at Big White. Instead, he was driving to Nanaimo. I remember that in the little staff room at Christina Lake School, where I taught for 10 years, my colleagues constantly reminded me to close the cupboard doors and the drawers that I had opened. It's so strange, I used to say. I don't forget to close doors and drawers at home. Why on earth do I do it here? After Lincoln went into care and I was alone in our house, I found myself walking into rooms in which all the doors had been left open and all the cupboard doors were ajar. Just think about what that might imply. I never realized until then that he must have been quietly closing the drawers and cupboards I had left open without criticism or complaint. For almost 40 years, he'd been tidying up after me and never said a word. And if that isn't love, I don't know what is. After he died, I came across the poem I tucked into his backpack for that bike ride from Paris to Istanbul. There was one more verse to write. I'm going to read that verse to you as a way of ending, and would you help me with the last line? And when we get there, it is, and tethered are we to we. And tethered are we to we. I will be bound to my man of the hills. I will watch his star from the lower ridge. The canoe will carry us. I'm going to start again. I will be bound to my man of the hills. I will watch his star from the lower ridge. The canoe will carry us both ashore. The road will bear us onward still. His eyes will shine in the small one's face in tender sunset blessings grace. This bittersweet will be, and tethered are we to we. Thank you very, very much. Are there any questions for me about the book, about Parkinson's or Lewy body or anything else you'd like to know? I certainly can't give medical advice, but I can answer some questions on that. And I've changed my glasses. Yes. In 2011, in the spring of April 19th, 2011, it was Lincoln's birthday.
Well, you look fabulous. It must be very, very slowly progressing.
It's progressing slowly. I've also had deep brain stimulation surgery, so I've got bumps.
Yeah.
I got my horns and my button, my magic wires. So. But yes.
I'd just like to thank you for sharing your love.
Thank you very much. Yeah. My pleasure. You were lovely, just so lovely to look out to see your kind faces. I appreciate it so much. I could talk a little bit about DBS if anybody's interested in what that is. Yeah. It's a surgery that is available for people with Parkinson's. It's been around for about 30 years. And what they do is they put platinum electrodes into the brain. They saw out a little patch of skull and set it aside, and then they put the electrodes in. It's an awake surgery, so you're giving the surgeon's feedback the whole time. And it's then those electrodes are attached to wires that run. Some people get the battery here, but I was too thin, so he said, put it in my belly. So I've got it, it's all attached here, and it's run by a little, looks like a little remote, but you have to place it right on top of the battery. Has to be physical contact, and it changed my life. I had, because of the medication that makes it possible for me to move, I was moving a lot. I was dancing all the time. It's called dyskinesia, and you'll see people living with Parkinson's who are just dancing. They can't sit still. And I was like that for, oh boy, started pretty early, didn't it, Jane? Yeah, I was very sensitive to the levodopa, to the dopamine, the synthetic dopamine medication. And so I was on the wait list for 5 years. There's only one surgeon in BC who does that procedure. And my neurologist suggested long before I was ready for the surgery that I get on the list because he could see what was happening. And I'm so grateful to him for that. And the surgery was a big success, and it gave me back. I could, I couldn't go to a restaurant. I couldn't sit in a movie theater. I couldn't go to a concert. I had to give up bike riding. I got back on the bike for a while. Didn't stay there for very long because of my eyes and my balance. But yeah, I've been so lucky. Yes.
Curious, what your relationship is with the diagnosis and the science of both of the diseases. Because, as you were talking about you trying to give your husband medication and him not wanting it, you know, that's not exactly something that physicians can touch. They can't help you
No.
there. And yet having a diagnosis, knowing something about the roadmap that's ahead of you has positives. So I don't know, your feelings about the positives and negatives of your encounters with
Okay.
the medical.
Well, I know that I'm glad that I didn't know that I was going to get Parkinson's. You know, people now they're able to detect it earlier and earlier and earlier, and I find that a mix. I'm pretty proactive about my health, so I got myself to the doctor when I was aware that there were problems. They came on quite suddenly. Steve Warren is here. Steve is our neighbor, and Barb is our neighbor, and they were sometimes cast in. They got caught in that net of cronies and people who were not on his side. But where was I going with this? I have no idea.
You were diagnosed.
Oh, right, yes. So I was glad that I wasn't diagnosed then. But getting the diagnosis of Lewy body dementia would have saved us some grief. If I had known that it was Lewy body, I would have been prepared for Capgras. Because when it started to happen, that confusion of who I was, that was awful. It was there were times when I had to phone them and say, I need help. Come on over, please come over and tell him who I am, and hope that he would listen to them. And we were surrounded by people like that. It was such a blessing. As far as the Parkinson goes, information is everything. With Parkinson's, I get overloaded sometimes, and I refuse to learn one new thing, but I will always go back and learn it eventually. Exercise is key. Attitude is everything. And it's a disease that messes with your attitude because it causes clinical depression. It's a clinical symptom of the disease, depression and anxiety and apathy. And I felt them all dancing around at the edge of my being, but none of them have really taken up a big foothold yet. Sleep is messed up. There are just, and it's good to know that it's probably the disease and not you. I find that helpful, empowering sometimes that I can tackle the disease. I don't want to fight with myself. Yeah.
Can I ask one follow-up?
Of course.
Did any physician ever tell you that REM sleep behavior disorder is often a
No, but I've read that many times, yeah.
And I mean, you're saying that you're glad you weren't diagnosed earlier. Do you wish that somebody had told you that this REM sleep behavior disorder was often a precursor to Parkinson's?
Well, I wish I'd known that it was a precursor to Lewy body dementia. I know that it is a precursor to Parkinson's.
Parkinson's, I mean.
Yeah, and the whole-
To a neurodegenerative
Yeah,
disease.
yeah. And the whole Parkinson's plus spectrum of
Yeah.
diseases. There are so many diseases, so many acronyms that I've learned in the last 11, 14 years, yeah.
Leslie, we have a question from
Yeah.
Zoom.
Mhm.
Joan Melvin asks, can you please tell us how your award-winning story adaptation contributed to Dancing in Small Places?
Well, it's just lifted right up out of off the page and stuck in the book, yeah. Adaptation is the central story in the book. It comes almost at the halfway mark, and yeah, it was written very quickly, and it was a big surprise when it turned out to be the winner that year. And that's how I got to Banff. That's how I got the book started. This one started.
And what did it win?
Sorry. It won the CBC Canada Rights nonfiction prize for 2016. And so one of the conditions of the prize is that you take your Banff residency within the year, but by the time that happened, Lincoln was too sick to leave. So I just called Banff and said I can't go, and called Canada Council and said I can't go, called CBC and said I can't go, and they all said, yeah, you can, when you're ready, just let us know. So I got there, and my first morning, I'm walking with my breakfast tray from a beautiful, beautiful cafeteria in Banff at the Banff Center. And a lovely young woman sits down and says, can I sit with you? And she turned out to be the 2017 winner. Yeah, it was great. She had won for, I could think of her name, I'd tell you, but I can't right now. She had won so that year she won for nonfiction. She'd already won for fiction in 2013. So, yeah, and we had dinner together most nights, and she was also working on a comedy routine, a little stand-up that she was doing in Toronto. She was lovely. We had a great time, yeah. And, yeah. Yes.
Do you ever have a theory that why you and your husband both?
So the question is, do I have a theory about why Lincoln and I both got similar neurodegenerative diseases and manifest with symptoms at the same time? You know, I don't know what to think about that. I wonder about our exposure, our house. We had our house, both houses in Grand Forks were tested for, what's the bad gas? Radon gas, and they're both negative. We ate a big part of our diet was organic. We didn't eat much meat. We ate lots of fruits and vegetables, and we bought our stuff at the farmer's market. And you know, I don't know why. I know that I have, if you isolate me from Lincoln, I had 2 concussions before I went to school, or one before I went to school and one very early in my school career, and those are implicated with Parkinson's for sure. And agricultural products, pesticides and herbicides are implicated in Parkinson's in increasingly smaller amounts. It used to be that if you were spraying without a mask, then maybe you might get Parkinson's, but now it's people with very small exposures are developing it. American soldiers who were exposed to Agent Orange and develop Parkinson's automatically get disability. They just get it as a given. They don't bother checking anything else. To answer your question, I just don't know what to think. Sometimes I think it's just fluke. Lincoln's sister died with Parkinson's, with young onset Parkinson's in her early 60s. And so then maybe he had a gene there are a couple of genes that are identified as predisposing people to Parkinson's, and at least one gene that is identified as guaranteeing that if you have it, but it's in a very small percentage of people that you will get Parkinson's. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Or yes.
You find that, the DBS helps the non-motor symptoms as well as the motor?
Not especially, it really addresses what they told me it would address, which is the dyskinesia, which is what I wanted. Some people find that it really helps their sleep. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't seem to help people with mood, other than that your life is much better. If the surgery is successful, then your life is definitely, your quality of life is enhanced. And so that makes it, that will help mood for sure. But, yeah. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool surgery. It's really neat. Hi, Nick.
Leslie, it's wonderful to hear you today. Thank you. I'm just wondering, what are you working on now?
Oh, I'm kind of all over the place with my writing right now. I've got all those starts of children's stories to work on. I just took one into my granddaughter's classroom that's done the rounds and collected all the rejections, and she said, "This is a really good story, Grandma. You can bring it to school." So I took it in, and we did a little role drama with it. It was really fun. I'm also working on a collection of short stories that are kind of built around Grand Forks, set in Grand Forks, in a mythical Grand Forks, and that's been really fun. And there's bad poetry in there, and lots of starts, lots and lots of starts, and not many working through. But I'm hoping while I'm here for the month, that I'm gonna have some time to write. But, yeah. And it's not lack of time to write, it's lack of discipline. And
Appreciated in your story how you and Lincoln kept your grandchildren so close and connected, and how, and I can't remember whether it was a Facebook comment you made or in the book about how you wanted to continue to keep him alive in their world going forward. Can you say more about how that unfolding?
well, I have the best kids. Our two daughters have been just amazing through this. The reason I moved to Revelstoke is because both girls wound up there, and my grandchildren, and they were driving with babies over mountain passes to come and see us when Lincoln was sick, and then I was feeling just awful about that. I didn't want them doing that anymore. And I knew that we needed to be together. We'd always been a close family. And so they're very engaged in my life, and they were we were dancing. One of the dancing in small spaces is us dancing Maisie, my youngest grandchild, who was born in December, and Lincoln died in June. And so she was in the room with us, with her mom and me and her sister and her cousins. And we would dance with her around Lincoln's room in the care facility. Yeah. Oh yeah, well, at that point he was pretty comatose, but yeah, right up until, I was in Vancouver speaking at a Parkinson's BC conference at the 1st of June. I never would have left him if I thought that he was going to die so soon, but he died on the 25th of June. So yeah, it went quickly when it went at the end, which was not a bad thing. Yeah. Right. You've been so lovely. Thank you very much.
Over the mic, give you a hug.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for a beautiful reading. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone on Zoom land. We have 31 friends in Zoom land out there, and about 45 friends here. So thank you, everybody. Leslie will be signing books over here. And Boyd and Jane are selling books in the back. And encourage you to have a look. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I got it. I'm not sure, because I did, I like, I read comments. I gave comments to Kathy, but the other one is really exciting, yeah, too, about in the lounge. Could have read it or not known that it's cheaper. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.